Hello, my name is Rick. Welcome to the Dwarven Fortress of Swampcavern, live. I have two goals today. I'm testing the technology that lets me live stream. I'm also recording a video for YouTube. So when the stream is over, I will post the footage from my hard drive, which should be the nicer version. I'm going to show off my fort a little bit and talk about a few of the dwarves. To keep myself interested in their world, I'm planning on making a large mushroom-filled park for the dwarves to admire. I'm also hoping to rebuild the dwarven population a bit. In order to understand why, you have to know a little about the history of the world the dwarves live in. Because of this, I'm not planning on interacting with chat too much. I'm going to keep that to a minimum, kind of. I don't really know how long I'm going to go for. My goal is an hour. If I do 40 minutes, I will be happy. I may have to check in and out of the stream a couple times to make sure that it's recording properly. Hopefully I don't lose anyone when that happens, but I am very new to this. This is only my second real live stream ever, so please bear with me. So let's see. Let's zoom in a little bit here so that it comes through a little better. And let's zoom in here a little so that it comes through a little better. And let's take a look at the fort to start with, I guess. Let's see. The Fortress of Swampcavern is built in a large rectangle, and it turns out that Romans always built their forts in squares or rectangles, which isn't something I knew when I built this, but I find it kind of interesting. I built this just because it was kind of an efficient shape. It contained the area I needed. In a lot of my videos, we see my guys standing outside, practicing outside the fort in sunlight. And the reason for that is dwarves that spend all their time in caves get used to it. They become cave adapted. And then when they go out into the sunlight, they don't like it. They literally get sick and they throw up. And it's actually rather difficult to keep dwarves from doing that. Almost the only way you can stop it from happening is by having them stand around in daylight all the time, which I kind of think maybe they don't like, but as military dwarves here, they're going to have to learn to be tough. Now, what I'm seeing is, oh, hey, Shelby. Thanks for checking in. I'm happy to see you here. I see we got a bunch of people. That's really nice, actually. So, anyways, what you can see on this screen right now is a giant cave spider and a bunch of the dwarves practicing. A few of these guys don't appear to be in uniforms. I'm not sure why. To make the game run smoothly, I have most of the population of this fort just standing outside practicing all the time. And one of the limiting factors with Dwarf Fortress is the speed at which the game can run, and that depends entirely on your computer, the number of things in your world, like people and animals, how many stones, how many objects you have lying around, and then the size of the world. Swampcavern is a smaller world, which means really one of these characters could walk across most of the world in a couple of days and explore the entire world in a couple of weeks if they weren't getting attacked by giant monsters or other civilizations or whatever. And the only thing that keeps these civilizations apart and from running over and killing each other is basically their own preferences and their own set of strategies and tactics. Oh, hey guys, nice to see you here. This is really kind of exciting and something for me. I'm kind of hoping this leads to new things, so good to see everybody. So anyways, the history of Swampcavern, the world that they live in, is a history of several civilizations getting wiped out, including that of the dwarves, almost. When Swampcavern was founded, the Empire of the Dwarves was clinging on by a thread. The king of the dwarves is actually an administrator in some goblin pits. He's been captured when their home capital was taken at some time. And the goblins, realizing the administrative potential of the king, put him to work as an administrator. And yet, somehow, he ordered the foundation of Swampcavern long after having been captured. And so my sort of story for that is he got a bunch of paperwork from the Goblin Empire, and he forged some signatures and he added his own to it, and he scraped some money together and ordered Swampcavern to be founded without ever mentioning exactly what was going on. But it was his secret plan of being rescued, is that the dwarves of Swampcavern would become powerful by fighting the goblins, and then he could become the king of their personal fortress, and then he could be rescued from the goblin pits, maybe, somehow. Unfortunately for him, the dwarves of Swampcavern didn't feel like they were ready for the king, so the few times they were offered to have him, they had no knowledge that he was in a goblin pit somewhere, and so unfortunately they said, "No, we're not ready for you yet, your majesty," and then they quit asking. So I don't know, maybe the goblins found out about the king's plot, or maybe more difficulties arose. But long story short, there's not that many dwarves in the world left. And what I've done is I've set the maximum population cap of this fort up a little bit from what it had been. And we have a lot of married dwarves, so in theory, they might start having children immediately because I raised the hard population cap. And so basically I have two goals of to keep this interesting for me. One is rebuild the dwarven population, let them have babies again, and it's very important here because the total number of dwarves in the whole world will be going up if we do that. We'll be saving the dwarven population from extinction. I feel like that's a worthy goal for a fantasy game. And then the other one is, to keep things interesting for me, I'm planning on expanding a large mushroom park somewhere for the dwarves to come and admire. And I'm thinking waterfalls, water features, maybe reroute the river from the surface to run underground. I've been a bit inspired by my Dwarf Fortress mentor, who seems to always enjoy diverting his rivers underground. And we have a pretty good opportunity for that in this world, in that we have a river that's not that deep, and already a bunch of it is being sucked into the waterfall for Swampcavern anyways. We have a high pressure diverter that we can pull even more of it in if we want to, although that's not without certain risks. The problem is the waterfalls in Swampcavern already are a little bit powerful. If a dwarf was to walk through the hallway at the wrong moment when a lot of water was going through it, they might, and have been, get injured. Sometimes you see little pools of blood around the drains where the waterfall, where some poor dwarf got nailed with a 1 or 2 level thing of water and it actually hurt them. But actually being forced to see the waterfall so constantly makes them so happy that I feel like any minor damage they take from it is well worth it. Because, not to brag, but this is an extremely well-established fort, which I guess I'm about to get into next. But currently, we let the dwarves goof off for a little bit, and they became ecstatic. We had a few unhappy dwarves. They've shifted into merely mildly unhappy instead of having psychotic breaks and breakdowns and constantly complaining to the governor. We've got a few middling happy dwarves, we've got a few mildly happy dwarves, and we have 195 ecstatic dwarves. And the reason for that is they're forced to see waterfalls all the time. They have a ridiculously large stockpile of very well varied food, which is something they really care about. This is one of the earlier versions of Dwarf Fortress, so this isn't kind of I know the current version kind of has a reputation for being super easy mode. This isn't that. This is a version of Dwarf Fortress that lacks raids, so I won't be sending anyone out on raids, unfortunately. That's why we're going to do kind of a construction project to entertain me and my viewers. You can sort of see my thought process. I'll kind of show my work, which is going to take a while. Hey, everybody. Yeah, I got a comment. Hopefully mothers won't carry their infants into battle. Currently, we have a lot of people in the army, and there is a small chance that they will. But actually, we're so well established that a lot of them probably won't. They may carry their children into demonstrations, which is something I've seen in forts with a lot of kids. And the one thing that I've seen from that is one of the kids got a few levels in the perception skill. And I think it's because he watched so much combat strapped to his mother's back or his chest, whichever way it is when they're doing their practice. So that really does have an in-game effect. And who knows, maybe we'll get some pre-made sort of soldier dwarves because they get some levels in perception as infants being carried on their mothers or whatever. So yeah, I'm hoping to keep that to a minimum. Actually, in my military, I usually try to keep the females out of it a little bit, but especially at the start, I wasn't particularly choosy. So hey, if anyone's got any preferences, whether you'd rather hear about the fort or rather hear about the people, shout out. Or if you have any questions, I'm really curious to answer anybody's questions about the fort. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and it's not easy to tell. And I'm trying to make this entertaining for people who don't play Dwarf Fortress even. Hopefully that's possible. So if you're wondering what you're seeing or what's going on, for regular Dwarf Fortress viewers, if you're wondering why there's no sound, there is no sound. I could turn the in-game sounds on, but I am so sick of them. And also the in-game music. It's great. It's very nice. If you've ever heard more than a few hours of YouTube videos with it in it, you get so sick. And especially I can't listen to it for hours and hours while playing it. So I've got both the sounds and the music turned off. If you want music during my broadcast, might I suggest you find some and play some yourself. Because then that way you can set whatever ambiance you want to go with this, whether it's heavy metal to go with some battle scenes, which are almost inevitable. One thing I should mention is Swampcavern is set in a Forbidden Wilds, or a Forgotten Wilds, whichever one it is. So that's the home of the giant animals, the giant animal people, the craziest cave monsters you can get, basically. We regularly have giant animals stopping by and charging the front gates and attacking the troops, and it happens with such regularity that sometimes I don't even notice when it happens. Why is stuff flashing green? I currently have a construction menu up, so it's talking about which things are constructions there. Now things are flashing because there's more than one thing in a square. Some things are flashing because here's some water going over a grate in the floor that lets water drain through the many levels here. These grates are stacked on top of each other so that water can fall through them quite quickly. The waterfall is really quite random, so I never know where it's going to gush or where it's going to trickle or even not go at all. Here's a spot where a lot of it is going through at once, so it's probably nice that a dwarf isn't trying to pass through that area at this exact moment. Let's see, what we're looking at right now is a bunch of dwarves' bedrooms, and these guys are quite messy dwarves. Perhaps they take after me. I don't know where they get it from. They have cabinets, they have closet space, they have chests to put their crap in, some of which are completely empty. And yet they throw their silk dresses on the floor. And the thing is, I've gone through this personally, and I've deleted some of the stuff from the world. And some of these things that are on the floor are so exotic and so neat, I didn't have the heart to destroy it, because some of this is like Forgotten Beast silk dress that there was only so much Forgotten Beast silk in the whole world because they only sprayed so much while they were attacking us. So the one or two items we made out of it are one or two rare things in the world. Okay. Oh, man. All right, that is annoying. I hope that doesn't flash up on there for too long. That really makes me mad, but there's nothing I can do about it at the moment. Okay, so we're coming back. Here should be Dwarf Fortress. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that, but the weird aspect I'm running my monitor in to get my monitors to work at the same time is making some of the controls hard to access. And so I couldn't turn that stupid thing off before I started broadcasting, even though I tried multiple times. But, okay, so let's see. Here's the outside of the fort. And let's see. We've got, this is a little thing. I have some cave traps, and the spider silk is left over from a huge battle where we unleashed giant cave spiders on a horde of goblins. Let's see. I'm kind of struggling a little bit because I haven't played Dwarf Fortress since this summer, but I'm sure it'll come back to me because I played it for several years, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of stories in this fort. I think maybe I'll just kind of wander around and talk about stuff that I see. For instance, here's a helmet snake in a cage. Here's a crundle in a cage. One thing these dwarves really like to do is capture their opponents and then practice on them by unleashing them from a bunch of cages and either letting their archers fire on them from safety behind fortifications, or sometimes we also just let a group of a smaller squad of soldiers, not the whole army at once, but a squad or two at once, battle a bunch of monsters in kind of an arena. We even have kind of a tavern set up sort of with the entertainment stage kind of thing, although it's not a battle arena. That one's just for performing and poets and performances, stuff like that. Let's see. Oh, here's one of the main rooms of Swampcavern. This is their tavern area. At the moment, Aquaman, Duke of Swampcavern, is hanging out here, and he's listening to a story. And we can even find out what that story is. It's in the mid-spring of the year 46, the human Gulgud Bunny Deep, the humble, Famine, became the lady of the Council of Mobbing. Oh, so it was a woman, and she became a noble position in the Council of Mobbing, which would have been one of the human empire positions. So what we have here is a bunch of dwarves hanging out. There's water falling through their waterfall, and they're looking at this huge mushroom park. And these are rather mature mushroom trees. They are 7 or 8 stories tall. In theory, they should grow to be 9 or 10 stories, but this fort is more than 20 years old, and I've never seen them grow to their full height. So I'm starting to wonder how long it takes mushroom trees to grow to their full height, or if they ever will while the player is while they're playing a fort. Or you'd have to retire it and let the game run for a bit, or who knows how many years. I don't know. Wow. Okay. Well, that is quite a bit of talking, but I actually don't really get tired of talking about this fort because I'm kind of proud of it. I've sunk a lot of hours into it, and it's a fantasy world, and it's a charming game, and all these little people have charming little backstories. I mean, I know their histories so well. They're more real to me than a fantasy character like Harry Potter or Aquaman, who I named years before that movie came out, by the way. I started this game in 2017, and I didn't really kind of finish playing this fort until this summer. Not that I was playing continuously, but it was an on again, off again kind of thing. Um, let's see, who do we got here? Oh, here's a miner. He has created a dwarven artifact sometime in his history. Here's a human bard. He's listening to that story. Here is Red Sword, a militia captain. Let's see. Red Sword, who are you the captain of what squad? One thing is Swampcavern, their dwarven name is Ogrid Core, which I really quite like that. Currently, we've dumped so many dwarves into the military that out of our entire population, 104 of them are soldiers, and we have 12 different squads, and most of them are pretty full. We've got we've the Hammerer is a position of dwarven justice, which is a whole other story that we won't get into right now. The shortcut is I'm going to say there is no justice in this fort. We've got the Axes of Felling, our first and best squad ever. The leader is Crow Girl. She is a woman. She is the single most mighty, powerful dwarven warrior I've ever seen in any of my games ever, and most other people's for that matter. You'd have to have a longer running fort than this one to have a more experienced fighter than Crow Girl. I'm not saying there aren't any. I know there are for a fact, but there aren't many. Let's see. You've got the Golden Bolts, which was our original crossbow squad. So these are incredibly experienced fighters. The crossbow people have taken out many a forgotten beast on their own personally. Many of my fighters have a single credit of killing a forgotten beast to their name. You've got the Spears of Stabbing. Have I ever mentioned that I really quite like spears in the game of Dwarf Fortress? They're really an effective weapon. They're particularly good for fighting giant monsters. And since we live in the land of animal people and giant monsters, spears are particularly effective here. Although the thing with them is they're piercing weapons. They can get through the thick hides of large monsters. They can pierce the internal organs of large monsters. But they can still parry a bolt out of the air. They can still parry a sword. Just like any other weapon, you can hit them with the flat side of it, and dwarves do. You can hit them with the butt end of it, and I think they do. They're just as effective as shields, or when you do that. We've got the Swords of Justice, and I think they're mostly named that because they are almost all carrying adamantine swords. We've got the Hammers of Time. I tend to name my hammer squads, something about the Hammers of Time. I don't know where I'm getting that from. Cassie's Macers. Mace, they're not the most effective weapon in the game. They're not the most dwarfy weapon. I like usually keeping a few around just because you get a few macers along the way. I think Cassie just showed up being good at maces, and a few people showed up being good at maces, and we just tossed a few more in to round out the squads. Oh, the Lashers of Doom. We're down to 5 Lashers, and they're all humans, and they currently don't have a leader because they keep getting killed. And I don't know why, because we're so good at keeping our other squad members alive. But something about the human Lashers, we give them the same armor as everyone else, the same training as everyone else, and somehow they're the ones that get killed in battle, and we haven't had anyone to replace them. So this is one of our smallest squads. Bolts of Steel, the second crossbow team, again, very well experienced. The leader, Goldsnake, originally was the leader of the first crossbow team, and he got unceremoniously fired when a better person came along in the early years of Swampcavern. And this is a story I vividly remember because he was so sad about it, and they made statues about it, and they made art about it. It was a big deal when Goldsnake left his original starting position. So I couldn't help but make him be the captain of the new crossbow team the moment we had enough Marks dwarves to justify it. And these guys are elite. Their names literally are elite crossbowman, elite Marks dwarf, human elite, elite Marks dwarf. One thing I should maybe mention in this fort. Oh, are we supposed to be looking at words on the screen? Well, at the moment, that's what I am doing. I'm looking at the military here. But I can switch back to pictures of the fort in a second. I'm almost done with my little thing about the military, though. You've got the kaiju slayers were the second spear dwarves. You've got the sharp axes were the second group of axes. And then you've got the light swords. And then you've got a couple unfilled military captain positions. So now I'm done with that. So here in a couple of seconds, we should be coming back to the tavern where there we go. So let's see. The tavern, what I'm doing is I'm flipping up and down through the various levels here, showing off that there are various depths to the tavern. And here's the upper level with this huge ceiling above it. Below that is a level with a low ceiling above it. So these guys are in a large, long, narrow room with a low ceiling looking out onto this vast space of mushrooms. And down here is an entirely different group of people with all these different decorations from the fort. I'm a little bit surprised I've been able to go for as long as I have. I see I'm coming up on a half an hour. Oh, actually, well, you're really helping me by keeping me honest, because that way I know what you're seeing. Because I know what I think you're seeing, but I don't know what you're seeing. So actually, that really helps. I know regular streamers are used to music and stuff like that, but I don't have any unlicensed music that won't get me booted off of YouTube or keep my videos from being there. I mean, I have some things I get from YouTube, and they're the only things that get through the filter, but I don't really know how to apply them here. That's sort of an editing after the fact kind of job. And I know there are a bunch of royalty-free things, but if they ever decide to not be royalty-free anymore, you're in trouble. If YouTube doesn't recognize them, it's the same as putting copyrighted material on. That's a whole headache I just absolutely can't get into. So hopefully the silence is okay for my viewers. And then again, if you really care, I tend to listen to cafe jazz while I'm playing this fort, even while they're fighting giant monsters or whatever. I find it more relaxing. Sometimes I put on modern electronic dance music, either when I'm cleaning my house or there's exciting battle scenes going on, to put myself more in the mood. Let me talk about some of the weird stuff you see going on in the screen. This is a peacock. It's very old. It's the pet of a dwarf. If a dwarf ever... When this thing dies, some dwarf somewhere is going to be sad. What you're seeing up here is a bunch of levers that control lots and lots of various aspects of the fort. One thing about my forts is every fort I make gets more and more complicated, so there's more and more things to control. This particular fort has gates and entrances on every cave level, sometimes multiple ones. It has different front entrances, like it has an underground front entrance, it has a above ground front entrance, and we can slam any of these or, not. They all have individual controls. The trade area where we let the merchants in to trade has its own separate doors, so we can slam that off, and anyone stuck in the trade area will be stuck outside the fort, and anyone coming in through the trade area, well, they can fight any merchants or anyone they want down there, but they can't get us. They're going to have to find some other path. Over here we have a bunch of different workshops, which has produced the far, far, far too many goods that we made in Swampcavern. I made too much stuff. I was over enthusiastic. I wanted to show off how much stuff we could build in a short period of time, and we went completely nuts. And then I was slow to taper off and just start living off of the excess supplies. So currently we're trying to not trade for any food or anything like that and just live off of what we have. because honestly, we could seal the doors and live probably for 100 years with the population we have now and the ridiculous overabundance of stockpile. And yes, it's hurting the game. Yes, it's slowing us down, but it was a learning experience, and the game is running fast enough to my satisfaction that it wasn't hurting me that much that I felt the need to delete it, for instance, which I easily could do. I do want to talk briefly about some of the decorations in the tavern, because some of these are the most unique, fun things I've ever seen in Dwarf Fortress. What do we got here? What is it? It's T for look, and then view. This is a gold statue of Oniki. He was a major player in this world. And then it's enter to view again. Or no, V for description. Yeah, so much going on. This is a superior quality gold statue of Oniki Lold Clasp. The item is a superiorly designed image of Oniki Lold Clasp the dwarf and dwarves in gold by Karnber Versathzir. Oniki Lold Clasp is surrounded by the dwarves. The artwork relates to the selection of the dwarf Oniki Lold Clasp to the position of expedition leader of the Letter of Deeps in the early spring of 125. Oh, yeah. Aquaman was the original leader of the of the fort, and he was chosen by the king himself. And the dwarves arrived in the spot, and they didn't like him, and they immediately fired him and hired this guy. And he was only later made the mayor and then the baron by me, in sort of an undemocratic thing, but. I don't know. I think the dwarves could have unelected him if they wanted, and then I could have just assigned him if I wanted. So it's kind of goofy and goes back and forth like that. But that's just kind of a sample. A lot of these are just the dwarves from the fort, but some of these are unusual. Let's see if I can find a really good one. Lignite statue. Oh, this is a legendary artifact of some kind. Let's take a look. A lignite statue of some being. It sounds like a goblin name. Oh, yes. It's a masterfully designed image of a goblin, Noso Icy Wraith, and Eslome Gulf Grizzles, the elf, in lignite, which is a form of coal, so it's an extremely flammable statue by Lamot. And Lamot, I can tell just by looking at that name, it's a combination of they liked llamas and some other thing. Eslome Gulf Grizzles is shooting the goblin. The artwork relates to the shooting of the goblin by the elf in the Mire of Obscurity, which is the swamp where we live, in the mid-autumn of the year 20. So this is like 20 years in the whole history of this world. This one elf shot this one goblin. And my guys are so into that, they somehow knew about it and made a statue about it. Oh, but because this is a legendary thing, there's a couple of other things in the various different materials of which it's made. And this thing is adorned with hanging rings of giant olm, which is a weird kind of subterranean, it's an amphibian. So whatever you think of amphibians, it's one of those. Leather, and it menaces with spikes of lignite, which is a form of coal. Giant rat leather, hey, I wonder where they got that. Lychee wood, and yak bone. On the item is an image of two dwarves in garnierite. On the item is an image of boogeymen in eagle leather. Just beatbox your own music, of course, is one of the one of the little tips I just got from the chat here, which is pretty good. I don't know. There's sometimes, sometimes if I'm cheerful, I start singing. I'm going to try to keep that down to a minimum, but maybe it'll happen sometime. I'm really tempted to momentarily shut down my stream and preserve the recording and just come right back. I hope it doesn't kick out all my viewers, but I'm sort of torn because I've been going for almost 40 minutes. And if I crash, I'm going to lose all 40 minutes of that footage. I'm doing so much stuff here. There's so many programs running simultaneously. On the other hand, the stream seems to be going so good. I hope I don't lose viewers for doing this. But You know what? What the heck? The whole thing is a giant experiment, anyways. Uh, I'm going to stop broadcasting for a second. I'm going to start again. Please, all 7 of you, thank you for being here for me. I'm not going anywhere. If you get kicked out, just go right back to my channel and come right back. I will be here. I'm going to keep going for at least another 20 minutes so I can satisfy my original early do 1 whole hour goal. But this has been going so great and so smoothly and so positively that I don't want to lose it. So I'm momentarily going to stop streaming and I'm going to start again. So there will be a part 2 of my first hour stream of this day. And everyone, please come right back. I'm having a blast. I hope you are too. Oh, well, I have a question here. The dwarf made the statue of an elf, and the elf isn't the one dying. Well, he was shooting a goblin, and if there's anything this fort is about, it's shooting goblins. Because this fort has survived something like 16 goblin sieges, and we've killed literally like thousands of goblins. We've killed so many goblins that we've depleted the local pits, which we are surrounded by. There are like 7 goblin pits around Swampcavern, and they used to have literally hundreds of goblins each, and they're down to tens of goblins, which was kind of the original goal of the king of Swampcavern, by the way, was to train these guys up and defeat goblins. But unfortunately, I don't think it's the right empire. I think the one he's held captive by is further away, and he just sent Swampcavern off into a distant thing so it wouldn't be overrun by the goblins that were overrunning all the other dudes. So, okay, everyone, I'll be right back. Got a little sidetracked there, but I'm going to stop streaming and then immediately start again. So, hopefully, I'll see you right back in just a couple seconds.